Hi, my name is Guinevere Murphy, and my presentation today is on child abuse. Have you known anyone in your family or among friends that were involved in a child abuse case? Child abuse is a national problem that is still ongoing today, and the victim rarely speaks up and reports the abuse. The main points in my presentation today are: what is the definition of child abuse? What are the different signs of child abuse that professionals and caregivers don't know what to report? And why does a child abuser usually walk? What is the definition of child abuse? According to an article written by Psychology Today, it states that child abuse is the direct result from physical, emotional, sexual activity, and even the result from neglect. Child neglect can also be considered withholding of food, water, shelter, and clothing from a minor child. One of the reasons why we cannot recognize child abuse is because we do not know what the signs are. According to Sourcebook by Joyce Shannon, some of the signs include unexplained burns, fading bruises, child is frequently absent from school, and has a difficult time walking or sitting in class. Another reason is because a child goes to school with the same clothes on for several days in a row without changing or even taking a bath. In my visual aid that I have presented today, as you can see, this chart shows you an idea of what type of calls and how many calls come in to the call center of our Child Protective Service Department here in Bakersfield, California for the month of April 2011 that were actually considered child abuse cases. Out of those 1,800 calls, there were about 70% that were considered neglect, which is the withholding of food, clothing, and water to a minor child. 15% were considered physical calls, which were unexplained burns, faded bruises, and difficult walking. 11% were considered at-risk calls, which were teen runaways due to abuse at home from either parents having under the influence of alcohol, drugs, or even emotional abuse. And the last but not least, sexual abuse, which is 4% of those calls, which were the deliberate exposure of a minor child to sexual activity. When a victim does speak up, the abuse may be reported by the abuser ends up walking without getting prosecuted. According to the Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families in 2006, Child Protective Services agencies in the United States received about 3.3 million reports of abuse concerning 6 million children. Only an estimated 905,000 children were actually found to be victims of maltreatment. Child Protective Services handles so many cases each year that when they do get investigated, either the victim does not speak up or the abuser just denies and says it never did happen. Sometimes, in some cases, no medical evidence even shows up, or the medical evidence heals and goes away, and so the abuser does end up walking. In conclusion, child abuse is a national problem that is still going on today, and the victim rarely speaks up and reports the abuse. In summary, child abuse can be a result of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. These signs are and include unexplained burns, bruises, and/or difficult walking and sitting in class. These child abusers often walk because they threaten their victims to not speak out, and these victims are young and they do not know what to do if they do speak up, and they're afraid of getting hurt, if not even death, from these abusers. In closing, now that we have a better understanding of child abuse, we will be able to keep an eye out for signs of child abuse and report our suspicions to the proper authorities. Child abuse cases can be minimized only if we speak up. Thank you. Do we have any questions in the audience tonight?
Yes, what is considered to be sexual abuse?
Sexual abuse is deliberate exposure of a minor child to sexual activity that the child cannot comprehend or consent to. This means a child is forced or talked into sexual activities by another person.
Where does CPS or Child Protective Services take these children once the abuse has been suspected?
Here in our town of Bakersfield, California, we have a safe house called Jamison Center, where the children are checked out by doctors and are evaluated at that time.
One final question. Why does the child not speak up and report the abuse?
This is because the abuser has threatened the child in such a way that the child is afraid to tell the abuser. In other occasions, usually the child waits until they are adults and then they speak up about their abuser, and hopefully the time has not run out to be prosecution involved.